Okay students, so let's have a look at the question first for this week's homework. Discuss the effects of a rise in competition on the level of efficiency in a transport market. So the case study itself gives you the bus market as the market you're analysing. Discuss question, so we know it's two sides plus an evaluative conclusion. The effects of a rise in competition, so we know that markets are becoming more competitive, so that's either from monopoly to an oligopoly or from an oligopoly to monopolistic competition. On the level of efficiency, so we know we can cover productive, allocative or dynamic in this market. So what we're looking for is something that is relevant from the case study for this question. Case study says the UK bus industry has undergone radical change in the past 30 years. It used to be heavily regulated, so we've got examples of a barrier to entry there, with most local bus services provided in the public sector. In the 1980s, bus services were deregulated, so this allows, and this is a reduction in barriers to entry, which has equaled many new privately owned bus companies setting up, so there's an increase in the number of firms, which would increase competition and reduce concentration. Whilst this is a significant departure from previously being the case, newly emerging private firms aiming to maximise profits, the government still continues to play a role in the industry. So it does talk about, even though that there are firms in the market competing, they are still trying to maximise profits, so the government still might need to have a role in the industry. It talks about government support, including grants and subsidies, and then it gives you a table with those subsidies on. So this table here shows increasing number of bus subsidies in the UK outside of London, and an increase in bus subsidies within London as well. The rest of the data we've got here shows some concentration ratios. So initially in 97 we have a concentration ratio of the 4 largest firms of 63% of the market, so we do know that's an oligopoly. If we go over to 2010 and we add the first of the 4 largest firms now, we have 66% of the market, which may be useful because that's showing a reduction in competition. Within London, you've also got the 4 largest firms, and here they have 70% of the market. So in terms of the question, if we're starting in the introduction, we might talk about that markets becoming more competitive would mean an increasing number of firms, and this would mean going from monopoly, where one firm has more than 25% of the market, to an oligopoly, where 4 firms have more than 40%, or monopolistic competition, where there are many firms. Then we might want to talk about a couple of the features of the market to explain what we're going to come on to. In terms of the efficiencies, depending on time, so roughly about 20 minutes, see how many you can get done. If you are talking about why monopolistic competition can be productively efficient, then you would talk about reducing costs to try to make profits, because as they are price takers in the long term, and they can only make profit in the short term, or at least abnormal profit, then they need to reduce average costs to try to make that profit. You can also talk about allocative efficiency for the market as a whole, as the price should be lower and the quantity higher than a monopoly, and also as the products are slightly differentiated. This can lead to more choice for consumers and maximise utility. On the negative side, if we're doing monopolistic competition, we can show the graph. And if we are showing the graph, and we're going to have only normal profits, then what we can say is that that price and quantity, the market cannot be productively efficient, because productive efficiency is where AC equals MC, and at that point the business would be making a loss, so that would be unsustainable. You can also make the argument in terms of allocative efficiency that again at the market level there could be oversupply, and this would lead to a waste of resources. If you want to make the dynamic efficiency argument, you could do that again referring to the graph with only normal profits, so there's no retained profits to invest, and if there's no investment then no innovation. Okay, so in this question there's a few different ways you could evaluate. One of them is that you could do time, and if you think that this market structure isn't efficient, you can use it in terms of time for the dynamic efficiency argument being possible in the long term. So if you can only make profits in the short term, and dynamic efficiency is a long-term efficiency, then you could say that it's not efficient, and that markets where profits exist, such as an oligopoly or monopoly, as long as they are contestable, could be more efficient. The other way to look at it is over time in terms of what's happening in the markets. So even when markets do become more competitive, there is always the incentive for businesses, because of profit maximising, to try to reduce competition or create barriers to entry, such as predatory pricing or advertising, and this will reduce competition and mean that the market becomes inefficient again. So you could say that the markets can only be efficient, or in competitive markets they can only be efficient in the short term, because in the longer term businesses will always seek to reduce it. You could also argue that it depends on government intervention, because they have an effect on making markets more competitive. So things like it does mention subsidies. Subsidies can be to help to reduce barriers to entry, and that links back to contestability as well.